Billionaire sees young hotel cleaner crying in the hallway.
Hey, what's
You
wrong?
won't believe what happened next. Have you ever felt
Can I help
invisible?
you?
Like you could disappear and no one would even notice?
Hey, what's
That's how
wrong?
Isabella Montgomery felt every single night as she
Can I
pushed
help
her
you?
cleaning cart down the long, silent hallways of the
Hey, what's
Belmont
wrong?
Grande Hotel. It was late, very late,
Can I help you?
the kind of late where the city itself seems to hold its breath. San Francisco slept beneath a thick blanket of fog that night, and inside the hotel, everything was quiet. The carpets were soft under her feet. The city lights shimmered through the tall windows like distant stars. And almost every guest was fast asleep in their expensive rooms. Almost every guest. Isabella was exhausted. The kind of tired that settles deep into your bones and makes every step feel heavy. She was barely in her 20s, but she carried the weight of someone twice her age. Her uniform was clean and pressed, even though her heart felt wrinkled and worn. She had been working since early morning. 3 jobs, 3 different places, all to keep her family from falling apart. But that night, something inside her finally broke. At the end of the east hallway, far from any guest rooms, Isabella stopped. She couldn't go any further. Her legs felt weak. Her chest felt tight. And before she could stop herself, she sank down onto the floor beside her cleaning cart. Her phone trembled in her hand. She dialed her mother's number, and when the tired voice answered, Isabella could barely speak. "Mama," she whispered, trying so hard to keep her voice steady. "Please don't sell the necklace." On the other end of the line, her mother sighed. It was the kind of sigh that carries years of struggle, years of barely making it through. "Isabella, mi hija, the landlord said we have to pay by tomorrow morning. What else can we do? It's the only thing we have left." "But Mama," Isabella's voice cracked. "It's the only thing Papa left for you. Please, just give me a little more time. I'll find the money. I promise. I'll work through the night if I have to." She pressed her hand over her mouth to stop the sob trying to escape. Because hotel maids aren't supposed to cry. They're supposed to smile. They're supposed to be invisible. They're supposed to clean up messes, not make them. But in that moment, Isabella couldn't hold it together anymore. "Please, Mama," she begged quietly. "Please don't give up on it yet. Papa would want you to keep it." Her mother's voice softened, but it was still filled with pain. "I know, Mija. I know. But what choice do we have?" Isabella closed her eyes. Tears ran down her cheeks. And she felt more alone than she'd ever felt in her entire life. What she didn't know was that someone was listening. Just down the hallway, standing near the elevator, was Alexander Beaumont. He wasn't supposed to be there. He had stepped out of his penthouse suite only moments earlier, frustrated after a tense business call. He was the CEO of Beaumont Properties, a man who owned half of San Francisco. A man who was used to control, to power, to getting exactly what he wanted. But when he heard her voice, soft and breaking in the silence, he stopped. At first, he thought about walking away. It wasn't his business. He didn't know this girl. He had his own problems to deal with. But something about her voice held him there. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was just real. Alexander moved quietly behind the corner wall, not to hide exactly, but because he suddenly didn't know what to do. He had heard people cry before. In boardrooms when deals fell apart. In arguments when partnerships ended. In moments of failure and defeat. But this was different. This wasn't someone who had given up. This was someone who was breaking, but still fighting. Still trying. Still hoping. "Mama, please." "I'm trying," Isabella whispered through shaking breaths. Alexander felt something strange tighten in his chest. When was the last time he'd heard someone fight this hard just to survive? When was the last time he'd actually seen someone, really seen them, beyond business deals and profit margins? The call ended. Isabella wiped her face quickly with the back of her hand. Then she did something that stunned Alexander. She stood up. She straightened her uniform. She took a deep breath. And she put on a small, practiced smile. The kind of smile people wear when life doesn't give them permission to fall apart. Then she pushed her cleaning cart forward and quietly returned to work. As if nothing had happened. As if her world hadn't just been crumbling around her. As if she hadn't just been holding her entire family together with trembling fingers. Alexander stayed where he was, watching her walk away. Most people broke when life pushed them too hard. They gave up. They stopped trying. They let the weight crush them. But this girl? She broke, and then she kept going. And for the first time in a very long time, Alexander Beaumont felt something he couldn't quite name. Respect. Curiosity. Maybe even admiration. He didn't know her name. He didn't know her story, but he knew one thing for certain. She wasn't like anyone else in his world. She still had hope. Even while crying in an empty hallway, she still believed tomorrow could be different. And something about that hope reminded him of the person he used to be. Before the money, before the power, before loss taught him to build walls around his heart. Alexander stood there in the quiet hallway for a long time after Isabella disappeared around the corner. And slowly, an idea began to form in his mind. Morning came too quickly for Isabella. Her alarm went off at 5:30 a.m., the same as always. Her eyes felt heavy, swollen from crying. Her body ached from too many shifts and too little sleep. But she got up anyway, because that's what she always did. She put on her uniform. She tied her dark hair back neatly. She looked at herself in the cracked mirror of her tiny shared apartment and whispered the same words she whispered every morning. You can do this. Just one more day. By 7 a.m., she was back at the Belmont Grande Hotel, pushing her cart down the same hallways she'd cleaned the night before. She tried not to think about the phone call. Tried not to think about her father's necklace being sold. Tried not to think about how close her family was to losing everything. She just worked. One room at a time. One task at a time. That's how you survive, she told herself. You don't look at the whole mountain. You just take the next step. But then, as she reached the corner near the east wing, someone stepped out in front of her. Isabella looked up and froze. It was him, the guest from the penthouse suite. The one she'd seen a few times from a distance, but never spoken to. Alexander Beaumont stood there in a perfectly tailored gray suit, looking every bit like the powerful man he was. Confident, composed, untouchable. Isabella's heart dropped. Oh no, did I disturb him last night? Is he going to complain? Am I going to lose this job too? Excuse me, Alexander said calmly. His voice was deep but gentle. Isabella quickly bowed her head. Yes, sir? Is there something I can help you with? You're the young woman from last night, he said. In the hallway. Isabella's cheeks burned with embarrassment. She wanted to disappear. I'm so sorry, sir. I didn't mean to disturb your rest. It won't happen again. I promise. Alexander shook his head slowly. You didn't disturb me. Isabella blinked, confused. He stepped a little closer, not in a threatening way, but in a way that felt steady. Safe. I overheard part of your conversation, he admitted quietly. You were upset. Isabella's face flushed even deeper. I'm so sorry, sir. I shouldn't have. Stop apologizing, he said gently but firmly. She looked up at him, surprised. Alexander reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a sleek black business card. He held it out to her. I want to offer you something, he said. Isabella stared at the card, afraid to touch it. What is this? My address. I want you to come there tonight. 7 o'clock. Her heart pounded. I don't understand. Why? A job, Alexander said simply. A better one. Isabella's hands started to shake. A job? But why me? Alexander looked at her with quiet honesty. Because most people cry and fall apart when life gets hard. But you cried, and then you kept working. That means something. No one had ever said anything like that to her before. No one had ever noticed her strength. Most people only saw her uniform, her tired face, her invisibility. But this man, this stranger, had seen her. I don't know what to say, Isabella whispered. Say you'll come, Alexander replied. Then he added softly, you don't have to decide right now. Just think about it. He placed the card gently on her cleaning cart and walked away, his footsteps quiet and sure. Isabella stood there in the empty hallway, staring at the card. Her whole body trembled. Her mind raced with 1,000 questions and 1,000 fears. But somewhere, deep inside her exhausted heart, a tiny spark flickered to life. A spark she thought had died a long time ago. Hope. What will Isabella decide? Will she take the risk and visit Alexander's home? Or will fear keep her trapped in the life she's always known? Let's find out together. Isabella held that black business card in her hand all day long. While she cleaned rooms, it sat in her pocket. While she folded towels, she could feel its weight against her chest. While she polished mirrors, she saw her own reflection staring back at her, asking the same question over and over. What if this is a mistake? But then another voice whispered back. What if it's not? By the time her shift ended, Isabella had made her decision. She would go. Not because she trusted easily. Not because she wasn't afraid. But because she remembered her mother's tired voice on the phone. Because she remembered her father's necklace about to be sold. because she remembered that sometimes survival means taking a risk. She went home and changed out of her uniform. She put on the neatest clothes she owned, a simple cream blouse and faded black jeans. Her shoes were old and worn, but she'd cleaned them until they shined. She tied her dark hair back carefully and looked at herself one more time. "You can do this," she whispered. The address led her to Pacific Heights, a neighborhood she'd only seen from bus windows. A place where people like her didn't belong. The houses were massive, surrounded by tall iron gates and perfectly trimmed gardens. Everything glowed softly in the evening light. When Isabella reached Alexander's address, she stopped and stared. The gate was covered in green vines and climbing roses. Beyond it, she could see a beautiful stone pathway leading to a grand house that looked like something from a movie. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might break through her chest. "I don't belong here. I should leave. This is crazy." But before she could turn around, she pressed the small button on the gate. A soft beep. Then a woman's warm voice came through the speaker. "Good evening, Miss Isabella. Please come in. Mr. Beaumont is expecting you." The gate opened slowly, like it was welcoming her into another world. Isabella walked up the stone path, her legs shaking with every step. The garden smelled like lavender and jasmine. Soft lights glowed along the walkway. Everything felt unreal. Standing on the porch was a woman in her 50s, wearing a simple blouse and comfortable shoes. Her face was kind, with smile lines around her eyes. "You must be Isabella," she said warmly. "My name is Margaret. I manage the household. Come inside, dear. You're safe here." That word, safe, made Isabella's eyes sting with tears she didn't expect. The inside of the house wasn't cold or intimidating like Isabella feared. It was warm. Soft lights glowed against cream-colored walls. The furniture looked comfortable, lived in. The air smelled like lavender and old books. Margaret led her to a small sitting room with 2 chairs and a table holding a pot of steaming tea. "Please sit," Margaret said gently. "Mr. Beaumont will be with you shortly. Would you like some tea?" Isabella nodded, not trusting her voice. As she sat there, holding the warm cup in both hands, she wondered again what she was doing here. Why would a billionaire invite someone like her into his home? Then the door opened quietly. Alexander stepped into the room, and Isabella immediately noticed something different. He wasn't wearing a suit this time, just dark jeans and a navy sweater. He looked human, approachable, almost gentle. "Thank you for coming," he said, sitting down across from her. "I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't sure I should," Isabella admitted quietly. Alexander smiled slightly. "That's honest. I appreciate that." He poured himself a cup of tea and leaned back in his chair, watching her with calm, steady eyes. "Isabella, I want to offer you a position here. In this house." She swallowed hard. "What kind of position?" "You would work as a household assistant," he explained. "Help Margaret with daily tasks. Organize some personal documents and old files that belonged to my father. Simple work, but important work." Isabella's mind raced. "But why me? You don't even know me." Alexander set down his cup and looked at her directly. "I saw something in you last night. Something most people don't have anymore." "What?" she whispered. "Strength," he said simply. "Real strength. Not the kind that never breaks. The kind that breaks and keeps going anyway." Isabella looked down at her hands, embarrassed and overwhelmed. "This isn't charity," Alexander continued. "This is real work. You'll be paid weekly, enough to take care of your family. You'll have a room here, a safe place to stay. And when you're ready to leave, you can. No strings attached." "What happens when the job ends?" Isabella asked, her voice barely audible. "Then you leave," Alexander said. "Or you stay. That depends on life, not on me." Isabella felt tears building again. "I still work part-time at the hotel. I can't just." "I already spoke to the manager," Alexander said gently. "They agreed to release you if you say yes." Her eyes went wide. You arranged all of that?" "I don't do things halfway," he replied. Silence settled between them. Soft. Warm. Full of possibility. "I don't know if I deserve this chance," Isabella whispered. Alexander leaned forward slightly, his voice quiet but firm. "Isabella, stop apologizing for surviving. Stop apologizing for being strong. You deserve a chance just like everyone else. Maybe more than most." And in that moment, Isabella felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not hope. Not yet. Something deeper. Possibility. Margaret showed Isabella to her new room, and the moment she stepped inside, Isabella's breath caught in her throat. It was simple but beautiful. A soft bed with a cream-colored comforter. A wooden desk beside a window that looked out onto a peaceful garden filled with lavender and tall palm trees. A clean rug. A vase holding a single white flower. It wasn't extravagant. It wasn't overwhelming. It was just peaceful. Isabella touched the edge of the desk gently, as if it might disappear. She had never had a room this quiet before. Her whole life had been small apartments, shared bedrooms, noise and chaos, and never enough space to breathe. But this place felt like another world. On the dresser was a handwritten note in careful script. Fresh linens in the closet. If you need anything, knock twice on the kitchen wall. Margaret. Isabella's throat tightened. Margaret, this is too much, she whispered. Margaret shook her head kindly. It's exactly what you deserve. You've worked your whole life. Now let the world give you a little space to breathe. I'm afraid I won't fit in here, Isabella admitted. Margaret stepped closer and spoke gently. Miss Isabella, this house isn't for perfect people. It's for people trying their best. A tear slipped down Isabella's cheek. Thank you. Margaret squeezed her shoulder. Rest tonight. Tomorrow we start slowly. No pressure. When Margaret left, Isabella sat on the bed and ran her fingers across the soft comforter. Her eyes filled again, but not with sadness this time. With something softer. Warmer. Relief. She unpacked her few belongings, a change of clothes, a worn book, a photo of her family, and placed them carefully in the drawers. Her whole life fit into half a dresser. But for the first time in years, she wasn't afraid of tomorrow. She was ready for it. Days turned into weeks, and Isabella slowly settled into a rhythm she'd never known before. Mornings were spent helping Margaret in the kitchen. Afternoons were spent organizing documents in Alexander's study. Evenings were spent walking through the garden or reading quietly in her room. No one yelled at her. No one rushed her. No one treated her like she was invisible. The work Alexander gave her was meaningful. She spent hours sorting through boxes of letters, journals, and old papers that belonged to his late father. Each document felt like a piece of someone's history, and Isabella handled them with gentle care. One afternoon, as she sat cross-legged on the floor of the study, Alexander walked in quietly. You're very focused, he said. Isabella jumped slightly. Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I didn't hear you. That's a good thing, he replied with a small smile. It means you're working well. He knelt down beside her and picked up one of the old envelopes. My father kept everything, Alexander said softly. Every letter, every receipt, every dream he ever had. Isabella looked at the envelope with respect. It must be special, going through all of this. It is, Alexander said. That's why I needed someone careful. Someone who pays attention. Isabella lowered her eyes, shy but touched. Over the following weeks, they spent many quiet afternoons together in that study. Alexander would work at his desk while Isabella sorted through papers. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they sat in comfortable silence. One day, Isabella shared something she hadn't told anyone in years. I used to sew, she said quietly. Clothes, repairs, anything people in my neighborhood needed. When things got heavy, sewing helped me breathe. It was the only thing that felt like mine. Alexander looked up from his laptop. You enjoyed it? Isabella nodded, a small smile crossing her face. I loved it. It made me feel steady. Like no matter how messy life was, I could still make something beautiful with my hands. Alexander watched her for a long moment, something thoughtful and tender in his expression. You should do it again, he said. I don't have supplies anymore, Isabella said. I sold my machine last year. Alexander didn't respond. He just nodded quietly and returned to his work. 2 days later, a package arrived. Margaret brought it to Isabella with a knowing smile. This has your name on it, dear. Isabella opened it slowly and gasped. Inside were rolls of beautiful fabric in different colors. A new pair of sharp scissors. A complete sewing kit, neatly arranged. Her heart tightened. I didn't order this. Margaret smiled. I don't think you had to. Isabella found Alexander in the hallway, shrugging on his jacket to leave for a meeting. You said sewing helped you relax, he said simply. I thought you might want to continue. Isabella clutched the fabric to her chest. I don't want to be someone who always needs help. Alexander shook his head gently. This isn't help, Isabella. It's belief. Those words hit her harder than anything he'd ever said. Belief. No one had ever believed in her before. Isabella didn't waste the gift. Within days, she had an idea. She approached Margaret in the kitchen one morning, her voice nervous but determined. What if we opened a small sewing workshop here? She asked. Maybe in that empty room in the East Wing. For women who need skills or confidence or just a safe place. Margaret's eyes lit up. Isabella, that's a beautiful idea. With Alexander's quiet approval, Isabella transformed the unused ballroom into a simple workshop. Folding tables. Borrowed sewing machines. Scattered pieces of fabric. It wasn't fancy, but it was full of hope. On the first day, only 2 women showed up. By the second week, 8 more came. Some came to learn. Some came to talk. Some came because, like Isabella, they were tired of feeling invisible. The room that had once been silent now overflowed with laughter, stories, and the soft hum of sewing machines. One Saturday afternoon, Alexander stopped at the doorway. He stood there quietly, watching Isabella guide a young mother on how to thread a needle. She was smiling. Not the shy, guarded smile she wore at the hotel, but a real one, a free one. And as Alexander watched her, something shifted inside him. Not admiration, not pity, something deeper, respect, and maybe something more. Months passed, and Isabella's workshop grew beyond anything she'd imagined. Word spread through the community. More women came. Then a local reporter visited and wrote a story. Then Isabella received a letter in the mail. A nomination for a Community Leadership Award. She stared at the invitation, her hands shaking. Me, she whispered. They want to honor me? Alexander read the letter over her shoulder and smiled. You earned this. This kind of event, Isabella said nervously. It's not my world. Alexander's voice was calm but certain. It wasn't mine either. Not until I stopped pretending I needed permission to walk into it. The awards ceremony was held in a grand hall overlooking the bay. Isabella wore a simple navy dress she'd sewn herself. She looked elegant, confident, and like she finally belonged. Alexander arrived separately, but scanned the crowd until he found her. Their eyes met across the room. He didn't wave. He didn't call her name. He just smiled. A small, private smile meant only for her. The ceremony began with music, applause, and heartfelt speeches. Isabella felt nervous, but she held her head high. Then, during a segment showcasing the nominees, a photo flashed across the large screen. Isabella's heart dropped. It was her, standing outside a police station 2 years ago, accused of a theft she didn't commit. The room fell silent. Whispers began. Isabella's legs trembled. She couldn't breathe. Shame crashed over her like a wave. She thought she'd escaped her past. But here it was, exposed in front of everyone. Before she could run, someone stood up. Alexander. He rose slowly, his calm presence filling the entire hall. The host froze. The audience turned. He walked toward the stage and gently took the microphone. Before you judge someone based on an old headline, Alexander said, his voice steady and clear, you should hear the truth. The room grew so quiet you could hear hearts beating. Alexander turned toward the screen where Isabella's photo still lingered. That picture shows a young woman accused of a crime she didn't commit, he said. But it doesn't show who she is. It doesn't show the girl who worked 3 jobs to feed her family. The girl who stood by her sick mother. The girl who never stopped believing in goodness, even when the world was unkind. People shifted uncomfortably. Whispers faded. It doesn't show the woman who started a workshop, Alexander continued. A place where people who felt forgotten could learn, heal, and grow. It doesn't show her kindness, her strength, her courage. He looked directly at Isabella now, his voice softening. And if anyone here believes an accusation defines a person's worth, he said gently, then they have not met Isabella. A long silence followed. Then slowly, applause began at the back of the hall. Soft at first, then stronger, then louder. A rising wave of respect. Isabella stood there, trembling. Not from shame this time, but from something she hadn't felt in years. Dignity. Alexander walked down from the stage and approached her. He didn't say a word. He simply held out his hand. Isabella hesitated only a moment before taking it. And as they walked out of that hall together, she realized something profound. She wasn't running away from her past anymore. She was walking toward her future. Outside, the cool night air brushed gently against Isabella's face. She inhaled deeply, letting it steady her racing heart. Alexander stood beside her, hands in his pockets, calm but watchful. For a moment, they said nothing. Then Isabella whispered, "You didn't have to do that." Alexander turned to her, his eyes soft. "Yes, Isabella. I did." She looked down. "All those people, all those whispers. I hate that my past still follows me. Your past didn't walk into that room tonight, Alexander said firmly. You did. Strong, brave, and deserving. Isabella blinked hard. I'm just tired of proving I'm not who people imagine. Alexander stepped closer. You don't need to prove anything to people who already made up their minds. Save your strength for those who truly see you. And what about you? Isabella asked softly. Why did you stand up for me? Alexander didn't hesitate. Because I wanted you to know you don't have to fight alone anymore. Those words reached deep into her heart. After a quiet moment, Isabella asked, Lucas, why me? There are hundreds of people you could help. Why is it always me you keep choosing? He looked at her with quiet honesty. Because when I met you, Isabella, you reminded me of the person I wanted to be. Someone who doesn't give up. Someone who keeps trying. Someone who still sees hope even when life is cruel. Her breath caught. I don't want to step in and save you, Alexander continued. I just don't want to lose the chance to walk beside you while you save yourself. Isabella felt tears building, but this time they were different. Not tears of pain. Tears of something new. Love. More months passed. The workshop expanded into something even bigger. Haven House, a full community center in a renovated building in the Mission District. On opening day, the mayor came. Neighbors came. Families came. The women from the workshop came. Isabella gave a short speech, her voice steady and strong. This place isn't just about sewing, she said. It's about second chances. It's about believing you're worth more than your worst moment. It's about community, hope, and the courage to start again. The crowd erupted in applause. When Isabella stepped down from the stage, Alexander was right there waiting. I'm proud of you, he said softly. Isabella smiled. I'm proud of us. Alexander took a slow breath. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Isabella's heart stopped. He opened it gently, revealing a delicate ring. Simple, elegant, exactly her style. Isabella, Alexander said quietly, you don't owe me anything. Not love. Not gratitude. But if you'll let me, I want to build a future with you. One we shape together. Will you marry me? Isabella didn't freeze. She didn't doubt. She stepped forward, her eyes steady and warm. Yes, she whispered. Applause rose around them like music. But Isabella heard only the quiet beating of her own heart. The sound of a life she never thought she could have. Alexander slipped the ring onto her finger, and she rested her forehead against his. In that moment, she realized something powerful. She wasn't the maid crying in hotel hallways anymore. She wasn't the girl who carried everyone alone. She wasn't the shadow of her past. She had become a woman building a future with her own hands, with her own strength, and with someone who chose to walk beside her. Not to rescue her, but because she had finally chosen herself. And that was the real beginning. Isabella's story started with tears in a silent hallway, with exhaustion, fear, and a desperate phone call. But it didn't end there. It ended with love, with purpose, with community, with a future she built herself. Sometimes the strongest hearts are the ones that keep moving forward, even while shaking. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is accept help. And sometimes one moment of being truly seen can change everything. If this story touched your heart, let us know in the comments. Tell us where in the world you're watching from. And remember, stay kind, stay hopeful, and keep believing in second chances. Until next time.